Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 26.1 Beta 1 has been out for a few days, and iOS 26 along with iOS 18.7 released a couple weeks ago. But there's even more to talk about since the iOS 26.1 Beta 1 is out. What's new video. We'll talk about the latest Apple news, we'll talk about some new features, and we'll also talk about the overall experience. Not just my experience using it on the iPhone 17 Pro Max and other devices, but your experience based off the YouTube community poll on the post page, where at the time of this video, there's over 25,000 votes and 365 comments. I've gone over all the comments to determine what the updates are like for everyone, so be sure to stick around toward the end of the video where I'll read some of your comments as well. Now, Apple is on a roll lately, opening up different Apple stores. Over the past month or so, they've opened up 5 new ones. In Detroit, they've reopened one in Japan, there's also 2 in India, and the latest one is in the United Arab Emirates. With the reopening of the new store in Tokyo, Tim Cook actually met Pikachu there as well. Now, most of these new stores actually come along with a new wallpaper as well, so I'll link the ones that do in the comments or the description below rather, and you can check them out for yourself. So you'll see here's the one for Japan. Not all of them have wallpapers, but most of them do. Apple the other day complained about the Digital Markets Act in the EU, saying that it puts iPhone users at risk of malware, invasions of privacy, and fraud, and has forced them to delay features in the EU such as iPhone mirroring, live translation, and others. Apple also said the rules could delay future hardware releases as well. However, the EU responded saying it has no intention to repeal the current rules. So I'm sure that's a bit disappointing for those affected with not getting the latest features, but hopefully they can come to an agreement where they can roll out features around the world at the same time. Now, it seems Intel is interested in working with Apple again. While no details have been made official, according to Bloomberg, Intel reached out to work with Apple as they haven't been doing much in the chip space lately, and maybe they could shift some manufacturing to Intel chip fabs to help produce their own chips in the USA. So maybe they could produce the chips they're producing at TSMC. I'm not sure about all the details, but it looks like there's active talks going on, but there's nothing that's actually contracted or ready to go. But we'll have to wait and see if anything comes of this. Either way, hopefully it helps everyone just get more of the product available. Now, Apple researchers this week have created a new method utilizing AI to predict 3D structures of proteins. This is much like Google's DeepMind with AlphaFold, but that uses a ton of computational power. The new Simple Fold model actually aims to make the compute cost less intensive and do the sort of same things that you would get with the others. So you can see an article about it from Cornell here, and it's posted on their website, and I'll post this in the description below if you want to check it out, but you can view the PDF, see more information about it, and see exactly how it works. Apple announced this week that they're releasing new games on Apple Arcade in October. You'll see NBA 2K26, and as we scroll down through the press release, you can see things such as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, as well as Thomas & Friends Let's Roll Plus, as well as Domino's Classic Tile Game Plus and others. So I'll link this in the description if you want to check it out yourself. Now, it seems that there's an issue with some iPhone 17 models where they cannot properly activate Apple Intelligence as it won't download the model. So typically when you enable Apple Intelligence, if you haven't seen it, it will actually start to download information in the background so that you can use it. This information is not downloading properly and then not activating, so those with iPhone 17 apparently can't use it. According to Mac Rumors, those having the issue have been told by Apple that they're aware of the issue and are working on a fix. We don't know if that means an update or if it can be fixed on the server side, but we're still waiting for them to update that. So hopefully they can just fix it on the server side, but I would expect an update soon, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, it looks like North Dakota could be getting digital ID on iPhone in the Wallet app. Now, we don't have a timeline specifically on when, but if we go to driver's licenses here, you'll see the ones that are currently listed. Apple updates their website every so often with the IDs that are coming soon. So it looks like North Dakota could be next. Maybe we'll get some others, but we don't have a timeline, like I said. Also, one thing many of us have been waiting for is the ability to add your passport directly into your Wallet app as a digital ID. This is something that Apple announced with iOS 26, but they've had to delay. However, they've recently updated their website to show that it's launching in 2025. So it looks like it's still coming this year, whether that's with iOS 26.1 or later on with 26.2 or some others. Either way, it looks like that's coming in the near future, at least before the end of the year. Apple also released Tap to Pay in 5 more countries this week. So one of them is Monaco. We also have Norway, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. So that's available now where you can tap to pay from one iPhone to another. So that feature should now be available. As far as new features in iOS 26.1 Beta 1, well, the first thing I wanted to mention is if you were using hypertension notifications, it looks like they've removed it from this beta. It was probably an oversight, but if we go into the Health app, if we go under Heart and scroll down, you'll see there's no longer an option for hypertension notifications. So if this is something you're using, I would recommend against installing the beta, as you'll lose the ability to use that on your Apple Watch. I imagine it will be back probably in Beta 2 or later, but it looks like it was just an oversight for now. If we go into the Calendar app, there's an update there. And you'll see under this view here in light mode, the backgrounds are all colored based on the calendar they're associated with. So you can see that here from September 12th and what it looks like. They no longer have just a clear background to match what's behind it and show white. We have a little bit more contrast this time. And if we go into Safari and I scroll down, you'll see that the address bar shrinks to a smaller size and has less padding. This is something we saw throughout the betas where Apple adjusted this, and it looks like they've done that in Beta 1. So you'll see on the left here is iOS 26, on the right is iOS 26.1. So a small change there. And now if we switch to the bottom style customization for Safari, you'll see the actual size of the address bar and the menu itself has changed. So it's a little bit larger, takes up more space, which makes more sense. We have more room to do things compared to iOS 26 on the left. And then Safari on the iPad is also changed slightly when you download something. So we're on Apple's Newsroom website. We'll tap download and you'll see now it's in the center of the screen. Before it was off to the side over here. Now we have a center download section anytime you download something. So again, if we download it again, it's now in the center. You can also see it over here as well. And if we go into a game such as Jetpack Joyride, you'll see game mode looks a little bit different in iOS 26.1 Beta 1. And if we go into Photos, you'll notice here at the bottom, the controls are just slightly different, where it's more of a frosted glass this time around. So it looks a little bit different, but it's not a huge change. And in iOS 26.1, code found by Philippe Esposito of Macworld shows that it could allow support for third-party smartwatches in the future. The code shows a feature called notification forwarding that would allow you to select any accessory to forward notifications to. So other than just your Apple Watch, maybe a Samsung Watch or something else. When it comes to other things, well, we had a couple app updates this week, two that I wanted to mention. If we go into our App Store, and Apple's Invites app was updated 3 days ago to version 1.5, where it now has Calendar Sync that helps keep all your invites automatically tracked in your calendar. Also, it has Liquid Glass, so it looks more like iOS 26. We have a new app icon crafted from Liquid Glass as well, and shared albums. So if we go home here, and we go back over to where we have it here, you'll see there's the Invites app. If we go into it, we now have Liquid Glass elements. So you'll see some of the menu items here, they change, and we have the little X button to leave. It looks a little bit more like iOS 26. We also have an update to WhatsApp. So if you use WhatsApp regularly, this is a nice update for translation, where it looks like WhatsApp will now support 19 language translations. So that's something that should be updated if you haven't already or be coming soon. Now there's a shortcut tip I wanted to share with you, as this is super helpful, and my friend Quinn from Snazzy Labs recently posted it on X, and it helps you get into your settings very quickly. Now, I'm not able to get it to work for some reason on this device, but it works just fine on iOS 18, and others get it to work as well, but it's called App Settings. So what it does is, if we've already added it here on iOS 18.7, you'll see it says App Settings. So maybe I'm in Music here. So we'll let it load here, and then we'll go to App Settings. It runs and brings us right to our music settings. So it's a super fast way to get into your settings, and something I really want to work on this device. I'll keep trying to get it to work, but you'll see it works in the Shortcuts app. I just can't add it to the Control Center. So it works on the device, but it's a bug in the Control Center, it seems. But super helpful shortcut. Now, when it comes to the iPhone 17 Pro or any of the iPhones this year, many have been concerned about the durability of the anodized aluminum on the new iPhone. In particularly with the anodized finish, many people were seeing scratches or what appeared to be scratches, and Apple recently commented about that as people were seeing it in the Apple Store. However, in a statement to 9to5Mac, Apple's actually said that they weren't scratches, but in fact material transfer from their MagSafe docks. Now, it's possible that's what this is just sort of rubbing off on the anodized finish. They said you can just clean it off and it looks like new. Now, anodized aluminum does wear, as does titanium that's coated as well. So I expect some wear here, but they were saying it was basically rubbing off from here. And you can see there's a little bit. If I just wipe it off, it comes right off. If I was using this, and maybe it was doing this with material transfer, but it doesn't easily scratch. I haven't had that issue when it comes to the overall material of this. I've even set it on tile and it still hasn't worn anywhere. So I would expect that to wear it out quickly if it would wear faster than others. But I do expect some wear after a year down here, probably from setting it down, as well as around the camera plateau. Also, some people are experiencing Wi-Fi issues specifically on the iPhone 17, iPhone Air, iPhone 17 Pro, and 17 Pro Max. I would expect a fix for that soon. Sometimes people say they're just using it and it stops working. Now, it's possible that this is across more phones, but it seems like it's specific to the new N1 modem. So hopefully we'll see an update this coming week, and I would expect that as well. And speaking of upcoming releases, you can no longer downgrade to iOS from iOS 26, as Apple has stopped signing iOS 18.6.2, and there's no file that allows you to downgrade to iOS 18.7. So this means that you can no longer downgrade if you're on iOS 26, if you updated your iPhone 16 already or any of the previous iPhones. I really wish Apple would make that an option for those that would like to go back and still have the latest security updates, but at this point, they're not doing that. So I would expect an iOS 26.0.1 very soon, hopefully as soon as this coming week. We saw it on the 21st or so in the previous years, but we've also seen it in October, early October last year. So we don't really know when it's going to release, but it looks like we could see it next week at some point, and that's what I would expect. So hopefully some bug fixes, the fix for Wi-Fi, and other things. Of course, iOS 26.1 is in beta, and iOS 26.1 Beta 2 I would expect in the second week of October. Typically, we're on a 2-week cycle or bi-weekly cycle when it comes to early betas up until about Beta 3. So based off of that, I would expect iOS 26.1 probably to release in late October or early November, but we don't have any specific dates at this point. Now, if we talk about the iOS 18.7 experience, well, this seems to be stable, reliable, and one of the best updates ever for iOS 18. It makes sense. It's been out for almost a year, and it was mostly just a security update and minor bug fix. So for those running it, they're fairly happy with it, and it's just what they're used to. So it's a great update so far, and seems to be the way to go if you're not on it already, but you're on iOS 18. When it comes to iOS 26, well, there's still some issues going on. We know this. We're waiting for an update, like I just mentioned, and recently users on the iPhone 17 models are now reporting issues with CarPlay. However, CarPlay connects so much faster for me with the iPhone 17 models, so it seems to be some odd compatibility still with some cars. But on iOS 26, 26.1, the iPhone 17 Pro Max has been flawless with that for me. But again, some people still have issues with it. Battery continues to be a main concern for those on iOS 26, also lag and stutters, and I still see that throughout on different versions, whether it's 26.1 or 26. I hope they'll fix that soon, but there seems to be lag, stutters, and especially on older devices, and some heating as well. iPhone 17 Pro Max generally is reported as being incredible, smooth, fast, and smart, and having amazing battery life. However, older phones going to the iPhone 16 Pro, 16 Pro Max have mixed reports with iOS 26, saying that it has severe battery drain, heating, and lag, and then phones older than that, whether it's an iPhone 14 Pro Max, 13, 12, or 11, they're having more issues consistently across the board, increased battery drain, lag, leading to some regretting the update. So it seems like the newer devices is what Apple designed iOS 26 for, with all of the graphical overhead. But with iOS 26.1, that overall experience seems to be much, much better. One example would be screen recording. So if we go into screen recording, there was a severe lag before when you were running it. Even on iPhone 17, it looks like it's much faster. It may not be perfect, but it's definitely smoother just scrolling, going into different things like the Control Center. Before, it would lag like crazy. Control Center still is a little bit laggy when it's running screen recording, but overall, it's much better than it was before. It's more responsive overall and lag-free, and also iOS 26 is causing a calendar search issue for some, so that's in 26.1 and 26. I haven't noticed it myself, it works fine, but some people are seeing that, whether it's on Apple's forums, Reddit, X, and others. 26.1 Beta 1 also fixed some messaging freezing issues people were having, as well as the Wi-Fi issue seems to be fixed here, and battery is much better for most compared to iOS 26. There's still some visual glitches, so switching to the clear icons or switching back, I've noticed some odd issues with them loading and things like that. So that could be part of the code needing to be optimized, but you'll see it load slowly there. There we go, it just sort of loads in, and once it's loaded, it's okay, but it's just a little odd that it does that. So definitely a ways to go, but much, much better than it has been. Some are still having issues, mostly though, with third-party apps. For example, it looks like YouTube is an issue. Sometimes it just won't play or has a blacked out screen, or sometimes the audio drops. I've even noticed this on stable versions of older versions of iOS and also macOS. Recently, I've seen it on macOS 15 versions, the latest one. So it seems to be a YouTube issue, not necessarily an iPhone issue. But it does seem like the fix is incoming, and the next step is Apple really refining this, and I think many of us are anticipating it. So hopefully they get it right. It looks like 26.1, though, is off to a great start. Now, when it comes to overall performance, well, I showed you it generally it's smooth. So here's an iPhone 16 Pro Max on iOS 18.7, very smooth. iOS 26.1 Beta 1 is generally smooth. ProMotion is great. However, on iPhone Air that I have here, this is actually running iOS 26's public release. I did notice a little bit of lag, but it looks like it's still setting up in the background. But I plan to switch to this so I can review it for a week or so. I've been using the 17 Pro Max. I reviewed it. Now it's time to use the iPhone Air full time and see if it's worth it. But I left iOS 26 on this just to sort of have the public experience of it. When it comes to heat and thermals, well, overall, it's been pretty good. The first week was a bit much, especially with iOS 26, but both of these devices, iOS 26 and 26.1, are generally fairly cool, not really doing a whole lot here. So let's go ahead and run benchmarks like we typically do here. So we'll run Geekbench here. Once it's running about halfway through, we'll then go ahead and measure the heat and then check the benchmark. So let's switch this to dark mode. We'll switch to CPU benchmark. Let's run it and see what we get. Benchmarks are about halfway through. Let's go ahead and flip the devices over. We'll see if they're fairly hot on the back or if they're not at all. So we'll go ahead and take a look here. And with the FLIR thermal camera, you can see here, the heat dissipates very well out of the 17 Pro Max here. And at the hottest point, which is right under the camera plateau, we're at about 38 degrees Celsius on 26.1 Beta 1. Now on the iPhone Air, you can see the heat is definitely in a sort of centralized spot. It's currently 42.5 degrees Celsius at the hottest point, which is right about here. So definitely a little bit warmer. Apple did a great job dissipating heat this year with the iPhone 17 Pro and 17 Pro Max. Now let's flip it over. We'll let this finish and we'll check out benchmarks. Benchmarks completed, and I have seen better than this, but we have 3,724 for single core on the 17 Pro Max and 3,650 for single core on the iPhone Air. We have 9,242 for multi-core on the 17 Pro Max and 8,981 on the iPhone Air. If we take a look at the history here, you'll see that I ran it before and it was a little bit better at 9,610. So we definitely could see some increases soon. Hopefully we'll see that with both of them after I use them for another week or so. Now, if you're wondering if you should install iOS 26.1 betas, well, at this point, I would say if you're on iOS 26, I would probably hold off unless you have an extra device. If you want to try it out, you can, but just keep in mind that if you have an issue, you'll need to use a computer to downgrade. But either way, it seems to be fairly stable so far. But again, I typically advise against it if you have to ask whether or not you should install it. But don't ever install a beta trying to solve an issue, as it could change with the next beta. There's always going to be some bugs. Now, when it comes to battery life, iOS 18.7 has been solid and reliable. As I said, it's more consistent than iOS 26 and 26 betas, it seems. So that's great news, getting people about 10 to 12 hours. However, iOS 26 is really hit or miss depending on who you ask. For example, over 50% say that battery is worse, but quite a few say it's solid or better. Those that sent me their battery life a week ago in iOS 26 actually get decent battery life. So if we take a look, and thanks to Abhishek for sending in his battery, this is on an iPhone 16e with 100% battery health, set at 80% charge limit. He had 4 hours and 33 minutes of screen on time, 51 minutes of screen off time, and used 49% of his battery. So overall, very good. The day after that, 6 hours and 31 minutes, using 63% of his battery. So very good battery life, depending on what device you're using and what you're using. Now, when it comes to iOS 16.1 Beta 1, 87% of you say that battery is better than iOS 26. So let's go ahead and take a look at mine. I've been running it on this device. We'll take a look at battery health, and I have 7 cycles with 100% capacity. And if we take a look at overall usage, we'll go down to view battery usage. You'll see yesterday I had 4 hours and 14 minutes of screen active time, 7 hours and 23 minutes of screen idle time, and used 65% of the battery. The day before, 3 hours and 46 minutes. The day before that, 5 hours and 41 minutes using 76% of the battery. Now, if you've been following me for any amount of time, you'll know this is much better than my iPhone 16 Pro Max was, and even this device on iOS 26. So it looks like it's an improvement for me. I used 83% with 4 hours and 45 minutes before. So overall, very good, and I've tried it with and without the active battery update here. So if we go into battery, go to power mode. I haven't had adaptive power mode on because it seemed to slow things down. I want to try it either way, on or off, and I've had it off for a day and it seems to be fine. But I'll turn it back on now and see what it's like. Now, as far as what you had to say, let's go ahead and take a look at some of your comments. Warawat Saley says 18.7 in battery life is superb on my 15 Pro Max. Keither754 said 18.7 on my iPhone 15 Pro here. I'm not updating to iOS 26 until I'm convinced my battery life won't be completely ruined. Alpha Metasar said, I'm using an iPhone 11 on iOS 26.1 Beta 1, and everything seems to be the same except maybe a few UI improvements for visibility. I'm using an unoriginal battery, so I'm not certain I'm getting the best performance, but it's generally okay and a few slight lags here and there. Battery life seems to be the same as iOS 18.6.2 and iOS 26 stable. Ashley88PM says, iOS 26, iPhone 16 Pro Max, update has been really good. Just occasional visual bugs. Battery life has taken a small hit, however I'm on vacation, which means 5G only, so time will tell, but overall very happy with the update. Chris Palmer 4983 said, I've been using iOS 26 on my iPhone 17 Pro. Battery life has been good, the standby battery drain has been great. I easily get all-day battery life with moderate use. Overall, performance has been smooth and snappy. William Forsyth, D9S, said, iOS 26.1 is very stable and fixed a lot of issues that were in the full 26 release, iPhone 16 Pro Max. Now, as far as the state of iOS and the next steps for Apple, iOS 18.7 seems to be that those using it describe it as super stable, reliable, and good battery life. Many users on older iPhones seem to be holding off as they're happy with the experience on iOS 18.7 and want more refinement from iOS 26 first. And for those using iOS 26, they're reporting very mixed experiences. Some say it's great, while others report a poor experience. Users generally love the overall design though, even though some don't, and people using iPhone 11, 12, and 13 models seem to report the most inconsistencies with the experience with battery and stability. The inconsistency in the experience just means that Apple has some more refining to do, so hopefully they update that very soon, as we talked about earlier. Now, iOS 26.1 is a noticeable improvement, as the 0.1 update usually is every year. This is a good sign for a first beta, and many praise iOS 26.1 as being very stable, so that's a great sign. Hopefully iOS 26 proves to be a super stable release by the first update to it, or maybe a few after that. That would be much better than what we've seen so far with iOS 18 at this point last year. Many people had many more issues. It seems like iOS 26 definitely has its issues, but seems to be an improvement. So that's everything so far with iOS 26.1 Beta 1, iOS 26, and iOS 18.7. I'm looking forward to the first public release update of iOS 26 to 26.0.1, but I think 26.1 will be a notable improvement. But let me know your experience so far in the comments below and what device you're using, and of course I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.